Hi everyone, this is Hansen and welcome to Insights to Impossible. This week I'm here with my friend Tim.
Hello.
And Tim is the illusion builder in the world. Building a lot of great props for all the biggest names in magic, really.
Yeah.
Tim, thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it. I've gotten to know you quite well over the last few years, and I've gotten to understand a little bit more about how you go into how you approach the work that you're doing, and I find it really fascinating, and I know our subscribers is going to find that really fascinating as well. Because, you know, with magic, I mean, when my mentor Bob Proctor asked me the first time, how do you create an illusion? It was the first time I ever articulated what I actually had done for 20 years. And I said, I go as far as I can in my mind, in my imagination, and then I work myself backwards.
Right.
And he goes, but that's exactly what we're doing in personal development. We're teaching people to go to that spot that they seem or deem impossible. And you give them the resources to work backwards. And so it was just mind-blowing, really, to me, because he's helped millions of people do that. So with you, that's really what you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, to a certain extent, I suppose. We're doing it with physically built pieces of equipment, right? If you want to put it that way. But yeah, it's very much about picking that vision and understanding what that end goal is. And then kind of somewhat working, I call it working to the middle, right? So you're working backwards and you're working forwards at the same time. So I suppose the working backwards bit is I'm picking the vision and going back to how we're going to achieve it. But the working forwards is using the tools and the resources that I have to kind of plow that path and move forwards as quick as we can. Right? You know, there's always a deadline on this stuff, right? So that's.
Oh, really?
That's part of the challenge, is that it's sort of deliver something that no one knows how it's going to work, that's completely impossible, and it needs to be done by the 22nd, you know, so.
Talking about pressure. So you have no idea sometimes, like when I approach you and I say, hey, listen, Tim, could we make a tree grow on its own? Could we do this? Like, this is a new piece we're working on. Really excited about it. It's going to be one of the great pieces in our event. But all these things, you know, we approach an idea without having any concept of how you're going to pull it off, but you have the deadline. How do you not let that get to you? So,
okay, so I had a guy that used to work for me, and he was an office manager for us, and he said, and I thought this was a good way of putting it, and he said this as an insult, by the way, that he said, you're the kind of person that is happy to jump out of a plane and work out how to build the parachute on the way down, confident enough that you will complete it before you hit the ground, right? So that's what it's like.
Oh, that's a good one.
You have to, and it's not being sort of reckless about it. There's a plannedness to how this works, but at the same time, you have to have sort of this kind of unwavering faith that you're going to hit the end mark when you say you're going to hit, and in the way you're going to do it, even if you don't know exactly what the journey is. And then the key for us with, you know, to put it that way, is that as we're making that journey through the development, is that you've got to stay connected to what that end goal is, rather than get caught up in the minutiae of what it is you're doing. Otherwise, you'll end up completely off track, right?
Totally.
So always, we're always coming back to, when we're working on any of these pieces, what is the ultimate, normally for us, what's the effect on the audience? What do we want the audience to experience? What is the thing we're looking to do? And make sure that that's what we're focusing on, and not getting caught up in maybe a mechanical thing or other sort of odd little thing that takes you off on a tangent, because you might have to stand back, and sometimes the worst bit is you have to stand back and go, you know what? This bit we're doing, going to have to scrap it, because this isn't going to actually get us where we need to go. Take 3 steps back and then head on out onto back to the vision again.
Listening to you talking now, you know, I can see how all the success principles that we're teaching and that we're working with really goes into what you're saying, because you need that defined outcome, not necessarily knowing how to get there, but have unwavering faith and courage to just press on and don't let the minutiae of the day take precedent. Do you have a tool or a technique that helps you?
I don't know that I have a specific technique that I'm conscious of, but I think that it is more of a repetition of doing the same thing over and over again. So for me, I find that if I'm stuck on something, I will I'll either go back to the beginning, or I'll get into a sort of a brainstorm mode. And for us to brainstorm how to solve a problem, sometimes it's just to come up with the stupidest, silliest ways of doing it that are completely ridiculous. But the more ridiculous it is, the more it gets you thinking about it. And then suddenly somebody hits, especially in our group, because there's a bunch of us working here, that will say, oh, well, maybe it's this. And then someone goes, oh, actually, yes, that is it. And then it all comes, and then it all starts back into flow again, and off you go.
That's so great. But that's really the power of the mastermind. That's one of the principles we're teaching, is helping people frame an outcome in a different perspective so that you see other solutions.
Right.
And they've always been there, but you were not aware of them because you're approaching the subject or the challenge with your point of view, which is an expression of your own programming. Right? What made you go into that business of creating impossible things?
So I started as a magician, and as you and I have discussed before, and you well know this, magic is not something that you decide to do as a career choice later in life. It is something you pick up as a kid.
Yeah.
Every single magician you ever meet will say, oh, I was somewhere between like 6 and 12 years old, and I picked up a trick, and I found this thing, and I latched onto it and all that. So yeah, there's no one in the mid-20s that says, oh, career change time, I know magician of the year.
In the middle of the office at
right, exactly.
Now's the time to do some card tricks. That doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't. It's always a childhood thing, right? So I'm someone that was doing that as a kid, and I couldn't afford to buy the big tricks, but I really wanted to do those.
Sure.
And my dad had a construction company. Oh. So the back of the house, we had a large area where there was tools and guys making things and all that kind of stuff. So I would spend my time around those guys and learning what it was that they were doing. Because I had a real goal, which is that I wanted to make that magic trick or that magic prop or do this thing. So because I was so focused on what that goal was, learning to work with wood or to weld or do anything like that, that was a means to get me to that prop getting built, right?
Yeah.
So I would pick up a lot of skills because I was looking at them through that lens. And then I would start building my own props. And then I had a small axe and I was doing magic with my own stuff. And I realized that I actually enjoyed designing, inventing, and making the stuff better than I enjoyed performing it. And I was a terrible performer. So
I don't believe that.
No, I was. It was horrible. So then I started coming up with all these ideas for tricks that I would never, ever be able to do them all myself. So I started approaching other magicians saying, hey, I've got these ideas. Are you interested? And then it sort of, you could say spiraled out of control. Yeah. That involved me leaving England, moving to America, all the stuff that's happened is all about that. Yeah. And the irony is that looking back, everything I learned as a kid and everything I was passionate about actually led to this career. I just didn't know that this was the career I was planning for. That
is so interesting. Yeah. And we had that in common. I remember performing magic for all those years and hitting that roadblock and thinking, why?
Right.
Why did I do all this? I felt I had wasted 20 years. But I didn't. I built the skills and the school of life in terms of producing results. Yep. And now I can look back and say, okay, it brought me to where I am, made me the one I am, and by bridging personal development and entertainment now, it becomes a totally different thing. So that's great. It's funny, your observation about magicians, because I was certainly one of them.
Right.
Like the kid with bad self-esteem, and I just didn't. Now, I was a shy guy, and now I could do something that none of the other kids could do.
Right. And that's why most of us latch onto it. Yep.
And without going further into that dialogue, we see a lot of that expressed in the business still today, don't we?
100%. Yep. Yep. We could create a support group.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I saw an illusionist here in town not long ago, and I thought, my goodness, he suffers from illusionitis. I mean, it was all about the props.
Yeah, which is good for my business.
It should. No, that's it.
But yes, you're absolutely right. Yes, it does happen.
They don't connect with, like you're saying, you should connect with the end result. What is the audience going to feel? What is that ideal outcome? And then we look at what can we do to get them there. So the same way we're looking to create impossible goals in our lives, the first thing we do is look at what would you love? Yeah. What would you love to have in your life and to experience? And then from that, you start the process backwards.
We have a funny saying here in the workshop that I talk about with my staff, which is that the customer of our customer is our client, which is really weird. And I'll break it down for you so you understand it. So if you think about it, we're building theatrical effects and props that are going to be used by a show, a producer, a magician to do something amazing for their audience. So who are we working for really? As a company, yes, our customer is the magician, the producer, the show, whatever. But the client, the person we're ultimately doing it for is the audience.
That's it.
So the customer of our customer is our client. And we have to keep remembering that.
I love that. That is so good.
Yeah.
That means all the folks who we are going to be having at our seminars, those are really
when I work on your stuff, I'm working for them.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day, that's who my focus is, that those are the people that I want to do something great for.
Wow. That is so fascinating.
Yeah.
And, I was having a mastermind the other day with Jeff McBride. We were talking about one of the small close-up effects that I'm doing. And he said, you come to a point where you think you've got it, and then you realize it could be so much better.
Yeah.
And so better is a good word, right? Because there's no end station.
Yes. Yeah. It's a lot of fun to do it that way.
Where do you go in your mind? So when I come to you and I say, okay, Tim, I would love that we create a floating faucet that floats in the middle of the air and it just pours out water, and like all these ideas, like the illusion of time that we did.
Yeah.
When I come to you with those ideas, where do you go in your mind to start looking for those solutions?
I think that I don't think I'm looking for solutions right away, because if I focus on how to fix it, I'm not focusing on maybe a bigger picture of it. So for me, it's about as quickly as possible thinking of as many scenarios as I can. So they're not necessarily fixes or solutions, but they're just scenarios, possibilities. So maybe it could this, maybe that, maybe this. And for me, I think the thing I'm used to now, we've been doing this a long time, is just quantity. So when we started working on time, it was about, okay, time's the thing, but there's so many things associated with that. So I'm trying to go through how many things relate back to time. Here's a bunch of them, and at the same time I'm saying, well, okay, filter that down. How many relate to time and relate to the messages that we're looking to go? Okay, so that knocks out these. Now I'm down to much less things. Okay, of those things, which things are maybe visually appealing? So okay, now these 3 things. So it's sort of like a funnel. And then to get you down to going, okay, now I'm down to maybe 5 or 6 things that are potentially great themes or realistic ideas. And then I'm saying, okay, if I want those realistic ideas to happen, mechanically, physically, technically, what is apparent? What looks like it could be a work or couldn't be a work? And sometimes you'll end up with, and this is the tricky part, you'll end up with those ideas that seem great. You'll end up with technical things that seem great, and they don't fit together.
They don't fit, no.
And what ends up happening is you have to shelve these, and you have to shelve those, and you keep going, and you keep going, and then suddenly you find this new idea fits with that technical thing from 3 ideas ago, and boom, now you've got it.
I like that. And I think what you're doing unconsciously is just using your will, which is one of the mental faculties, to hold attention on one thing at a time to the exclusion of whatever else is going on, plus your reasoning factor that enables us to take concepts and tweak them and change them until it clicks.
Yes. I would call it stubbornness for myself, but yes, you're right. It's will. You're just kind of, and it does. All of this stuff gets sort of willed into existence, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to.
I forgot who said this quote, but I love it. Man's biggest challenge is poverty of imagination and lack of attention. Because what you're really needing to do is keep your attention on one thing at a time and keep using your reasoning factor and your imagination to take you there.
Yeah,
that's such a great way to look at it.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in sort of coming back to an idea too. So I think it's that idea you can't, especially in what we do, that perfection is not a real thing to aim for, right? Because you'll never finish.
No.
So there has to be a point where, and I'm not saying that, I want to do work that's imperfect, but for it to appear to be the best it can be, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to chip it and chip it and chip it until it's perfect, because I will never get there. Instead, I have to know when to stop and to let it sit for a little bit. And sometimes when you let it sit, you come back to it with fresh eyes and go, oh, actually, that's the thing that needed to happen. And then it's there. It's far better than, once you get to an idea, just like panicking about, is it going to be right? Is it going to be right? Is it going to be right? Because once I get into that mode, I can't do it.
No, you shut it down. You shut the creativity. That's the first thing that goes.
Absolutely.
World-class solutionists, they all come to you for advice, for help. You've built for Copperfield, Chris Angel, all the greats, and Cirque du Soleil as well.
Yeah.
What tip could you give to our subscribers when it comes to thinking outside the box? Because that is what you're doing often. Do you have a ritual? Do you go somewhere? Do you engage in a certain activity to help open up your mind?
I do. So I have a very distinct sort of, well, it's technically a block schedule. I have a schedule for my days that goes by the hour, and I stick to it pretty rigorously. And there's bits in there that can flex around depending on what's going on, but in general, it allows me to carve out certain times a day for stuff. So I have a time at the beginning of the day that's sort of a quiet time, which is where I can do a lot of thinking about what's coming up, right? And that's a really good time for not just planning. So honestly, what tends to happen in that time is not as much of the project stuff. Oh, how is this piece going to work? How am I going to build that? It's bigger picture. So that time in the morning is, where's the company going? Where's my business going? Where's my life going? How can I make sure that we're on track, that we're staying true to the plan, and all these things. So that morning time, it's not very long, but that's, it's about an hour, and that's really great time for that. And then on the weekends, I have one day on the weekend where I actually go off-site to a specific place, get a cup of coffee, pop the headphones in, and I'm there with the notepad just for that quiet time.
That's great.
Yeah, I won't tell you where it is, because I don't want anyone to come and interrupt me.
I love it. Just secret space.
Yeah.
One thing that we recommend our subscribers and our participants to do is, when they are charting a course of a new direction in their life, is to do exactly that, is to go somewhere undisturbed, put on some music, relax completely, and let the mind flow freely. Yeah. Which is not easy for a lot of people to do, because we're compulsively thinking about what we should be doing or what the daily grind is. And so removing yourself from that, I think, often is a very beneficial thing to do, because then you see the bigger picture. Yes, absolutely. And that time for me on the weekend is also a sort of like, nothing can be wrong at that point. As far as if I'm writing ideas down, the rule is write everything down, put everything on paper, which works for me. Because if I start to edit in my head, then I get caught up in the story of it, or this will never work because of that, or then you bring yourself right back to it. Yeah, yeah. So it's sort of a permission to just put anything silly or whatever it is, just put it down and keep going. I like that. That's what we tell our folks too. You have permission to be silly. Yes. Right. To get results you haven't gotten before, you need to start doing things you haven't done before. Mm-hmm. And for many people, that is out of the box kind of idea. But when you're working with all these projects and things aren't going the way you are envisioning, roadblocks, challenges, what do you do to stay on course? Like, what is one thing that you do or the team does to stay focused? So I have a joke around here in my workshop that is that, number one, I don't get angry because it's way too much effort and I'm too lazy for that. So that's great. Which is, so I will put it this way. One thing I've noticed with everyone that I work with that is performing at the highest of level, right? So that would be performers, producers, directors, and we're talking, anyone that's running it and just doing so well, you look at them and go, oh my God, that guy is just killing it. The one trait I've noticed that every single one of them do that I've adopted pretty rigorously is this sort of extraordinary effort to refocus onto solution when it all goes wrong. Yeah. So essentially it's some version of something's massively gone wrong. You take a look at it, and there's that moment of, I always call it like the sigh and the roll up the sleeve. So the sigh is, oh God, it's all gone wrong. Mm-hmm. And followed instantly by roll up the sleeves. What's the action we're going to take to get this going and fix this? What's the solution? Yeah. So my staff adopted it really well, and we call it solution mode. So as soon as something goes wrong, there's no blame game or get mad, or it's how quick you get yourself into solution mode. That's great. I love that. And I work on the theory that as soon as anyone that's working in my team or on one of these projects, as soon as they get angry about something, that bit in your brain that's creatively going to come up with a solution to the problem, you're shutting it down, right? Yeah. So as soon as you shut that down, of course you're not going to be able to solve the problem. You're just going to be angry. Yeah. So we try to keep everyone on that mindset of straight into solution. Mm-hmm. What is the thing? What is the forward motion here? And sometimes you look at it and say, nothing works. I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And there is no forward motion. And the answer to that is still do something. Yeah. Anything. Even if you don't think it's going to work, try something, because that will then lead you to the next thing, which will ultimately get you to a solution to move it forwards. I love that. So not lose momentum. Just do something that keeps you moving, because that activity forces you in a creative direction again to look at solutions. Absolutely. That's great. That is so great. And that's really a mental muscle that you're building. And as a team, I can see how beneficial that is. Yeah, it honestly takes practice. It's not something that you can just go, oh, I'm starting today, I'm just going to, it's something that I've really pushed here for a long, long time with the staff, and felt really strongly that the way that this business has to operate is that way. Right? Absolutely. It's the only way we can achieve it. That's it. I was so impressed when we conceptualized and built the time illusion. Yeah. So for 13 years, I had that in my mind of how do I illustrate a decision in time moving both ways in time at the same time.
Yeah.
For 13 years, I just couldn't get it. And so after getting to know you, I decided at New Year's, this is the year. Well,
Yeah.
So we got together, we masterminded, we brainstormed, and the solutions you came up with was so great. But even then, from the conceptualization of that
Yep.
to the execution,
Oh, it's
it was
fraught with roadblocks.
Are you kidding? It was like one thing after the next, and it was like I said from stage when we did it the first time.
Yeah.
It was failing our way
Yep.
to success.
Absolutely.
It was almost chasing the breakdowns and chasing the
Yep.
failures to see where the weakest link is.
Yes.
Is that part of the usual process for you when you work out things?
If I'm honest, yeah, it varies in volume,
Yeah.
right? But in general, yeah, that's actually, and that is why, especially when I'm bringing on more team members, we have to acknowledge two things. One, it's a hard job to do, right? If I'm honest, I'm used to it because I've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
But also that me, everyone on my team has to, to a certain degree, be quite brave because you're not taught to work this way, right? My son is 8, he's at school, and he's not taught, he is at home, we really go for it, but he's not taught to go, hey, you got the answer wrong, which means you're moving forwards, right? It's you got the answer wrong, so you have to move backwards and do it again.
Yeah,
right?
You get the red X instead.
Absolutely. And in the work space, you come into the professional world, and people in general will, you come to a job, if you screw the job up, your boss will yell at you, or you'll be in trouble, or whatever, you could get reprimanded. And the irony is here, and I've got to be careful how I word this, you don't get reprimanded for messing up, because messing up is part of the process.
Yeah.
So it's tricky from a business standpoint. If you're running a business, you go, how can you have a bunch of employees that are constantly messing up? But I don't mean it like that. What I mean is that the freedom to experiment and go, okay, I am completely willing to try this, knowing this might completely be an epic fail, is what is absolutely necessary to do that.
But the failures are the ones we learn from.
Yes,
right.
100%.
And I think when you adopt that mindset of let me start to fail with pride and move on with it, that's really when you start to win.
Absolutely.
And I love what you're saying about your son in school.
Yeah.
We're taught that failing is a bad thing.
Oh.
And even throughout many people's childhoods, we've heard all, our upbringing, don't do that, be careful with that, you may fall trip, that's too dangerous.
Right.
So people built this bubble of safety around themselves, and they don't venture outside, they don't step out and bet on themselves, because now that there's unknown is now associated with bad.
Right.
And unknown is amazing.
It's what makes it happen, right? That's the irony of this kind of stuff, is that you've got to do that.
Yeah.
Like you absolutely have to do that. And it's sometimes for us, it's back to the momentum thing. It's about just taking those steps forwards, even if you're completely scared that it's going to go completely wrong.
Yeah.
And there've been times for us where I've taken on projects, and it's a calculated risk, but you go, this is a growth project. I'm going to take on something. I'm going to say yes to a job that I don't know if I can achieve it or not. And you have to, and it's scary as hell, but you take that job and you go, you know what? I'm going to do this job, because when I get to the other side of this, no matter which way how this goes down, I'm going to be better for it. And we take those jobs and you leap forwards and you do it, and it's messy and dirty and horrible, and you get through and you get to the other side and go, oh my God, look what we did.
Yeah.
And it actually does work. And then or even if it doesn't work the way you thought it was going, you get to the other side and you go, you know what? We're so much better for that.
You grew in the process.
100%.
So Tim, we've talked about how social impact affects us as we're growing and finding our path in life. As a magician, as a young guy in school, I was handed the handbook of things you could become later on in life, and I desperately looked for the magician section, and it wasn't there.
Right.
And I felt boxed in.
Right.
How did you experience that?
So at my school was similar. There was, I think you filled out a questionnaire, tick a bunch of boxes, check the boxes, and then they calculate it, spit out an answer, and tell you what you should do as a career. I think for me it was social worker, because you're outgoing, and anything outgoing is a social worker apparently. So I said, when that comes out, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go and do magic for a career. I'm going to do something in that business. And then you go sit with a counselor, and they sort of help you. You're 15, 16 years old, and they're sort of saying, okay, got to think about what career you're going to go into and what you want to do. And I would say, yeah, I'm going to go and work in the magic business and be a magician, or and they would go, yeah, but what's the real job? What's the actual career? and they couldn't get their head around the idea that I was no, this is what it is. So they would placate you and go, well, maybe you could do something here or something. No, I wasn't interested in any of that.
Well, that's because schools are built for educating workers and not people who want to do their own thing, entrepreneurs necessarily. And the school system still today is very much like that. You're put in a box, and if you don't fit in the box, you are the outcast, you're the different one. And so we see people now in our programs, they hit midlife, dissatisfied, never listened to that little voice within. And now they're starting to wake up to the reality that what they chose was imposed upon them. It wasn't their choice. So now they're looking to, okay, what would I love? But I think we could slash a lot of years off that process if we early on were encouraged to think outside the box.
100%. And that's exactly it. And I think that I think in the education system, there's people that are trying, teachers that are trying to do that. But in general, the system itself is already built this way that you can't very easily, unless you're stubborn like I am, you can't just go, oh, I'm just going to go do this instead, and that's it.
When I look back on my journey, I find that it built some really thick skin for me in terms of not listening to people's opinions. In fact, when I shared an idea for an illusion, like in Denmark, we wanted to predict the lottery numbers, and that's what we're going to do. People say, how are you going to do that? You can't do that. No, I know that. And the more people that told me I couldn't do it, the more drive it sort of gave me to keep pushing through to prove the people around me wrong. Do you find the same happening or were happening for you?
Yeah, well, and I think the thing is that you get, what's that quote? It's like I'm trying to remember, it's a good quote. It's the guy that says it can't be done is taken over by the guy that's already doing it or something like that. It's this thing that I think there's a driver when you're told no, and it's almost a driver, not from anger or aggression, but it's a type of motivator when someone says you can't do that. And I think for us, that's definitely become for me, it's become sometimes unhealthily so, a reason to do something, right? And not because somebody else said so, but because I want to do something, and the more people that gang up and say, oh no, I don't think that's going to happen, is the more times I'm going, yeah, no, now I'm really going to do it. Because you don't think it's possible. So yeah, I think there's that. And then also when I was growing up, I was lucky that I didn't have a group around me. My parents were really good. My dad particularly never told me no. And I don't mean from a spoiled brat perspective. I mean never told me no as far as you can't do something. Right? If I wanted to do something, it was go do it. It wasn't necessarily like massive amounts of encouragement, but it was I never knew that no was an option because I wasn't told I couldn't do it. I didn't hear it from my family. So I just figured I could do it. There was no other thought, right? You just, okay. No,
and now you're in the business of making impossible things happen. Probably largely, to a large extent, as a result of that. Because as a kid, you weren't conditioned to think that there were limitations of any sort. You just kept pushing the boundary.
Absolutely. And I've kind of become really, really passionate about achieving those things that people say can't get done, right? That's the driver now. So that's what it is. It's anything that gets laid out before you and you go, hey, I'm looking at this thing, and maybe even I don't know how it's going to get done. But then that's a reason for me to go find out and to show them that it can happen.
That's so good. I really want you to hone in this and focus. Think about how many times in life you're going through that. You have friends, you have family members telling you why you shouldn't go for that goal, why it's too impossible, why it's out there. You need to use that as a motivator. That creates a very healthy state in you of finding a way. Using every time you hear no, or you shouldn't, use it as a kind reminder that you are on your way out of your comfort zone, you're on your way out of your paradigm, you're creating a new model. And that inevitably comes with resistance.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I had a mentor and his thing was always, there's always a way. That was it, that was the catchphrase, there's always a way. And something would go wrong and he'd go, there's always a way. Then he'd stop and get a cup of tea, because we're English, and he would go do that first. Drink the tea, and then there's always a way, and then start calculating out what that way would be. That was the thing. So I find myself saying that often. Just got to find it. You've got to look at what it is and go, hey, this thing isn't working. This doesn't. People say it can't be done. There's a way. I just need to find it.
That's it. And that's using perception effectively too, to find the good in it. I've made a habit out of every time something goes wrong or doesn't go the way I like it, I always say to myself, that's good. And then I start looking for that good in it because it's there, like we talked about, right? Have you ever created something that scared and excited you at the same time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I will tell you about one trick because it's an interesting It's an interesting story. So I came up with this idea for a trick with a tank of water. And I came up with the idea for the trick probably when I was 16 or 17 years old. Mm-hmm. And it was so ridiculous that I thought, well, no one's ever going to do this trick. And about 2 years ago, actually a former mentor and friend of mine mm-hmm. said, hey, I'm putting a show together. I want to do something completely outlandish. What have you got? And I said, well, I know you'll never do it, but here's this ridiculously crazy idea. So him and I together both agreed, you know what? Let's just go for it and do this thing.
Wow.
So the whole idea was that it was a guy escapes from a tank of water, like the old Houdini trick. But the way he does it is he walks through the glass on the front of the tank. And at one point he gets stuck halfway in and halfway out. So he's now in the water and out of the water at the same time, melted through this piece of glass.
Oh my God, that's good, Tim.
So from a magic point, this is absolute insanity from a technical standpoint.
I was about to say, I mean, my God.
So I had an idea of how I wanted it to work, but it still meant that I was getting involved in technical things that I had never done before, and the client was getting involved in something they'd never done before. Both of us, this was a huge leap of faith, and we agreed it was, and we knew it was going to be. And it required dealing with, I forget how many, it was something like 700 pounds of water in the tank, and the tank was made of 3/4 thick bulletproof glass or something. I mean, everything about it was just absolutely insane. Yeah. For a trick. So as we worked through this stuff, it was, as you told, fail after fail after fail until we finally nailed it. And we nailed the technical idea of how to make this work about 3 days before this had to ship out.
Oh, that's great.
So it was so tight.
Yeah.
But the win was so big for everyone on the team because it was this thing that you're going, I don't know if we can make this work. I don't know if we can make this work. And then we hit it. So once we got it done, we got all the people, all of the stuff that had worked on it. We all got together, and I got in the tank, which I think they enjoyed just dunking me in the water. Yeah. I got in the tank and I did it, and it worked. And it was such a fantastic moment. And what we'd learned so much about engineering. We'd learned so much more about construction techniques. We learned a lot about water. So all these things. But it was just this massive learning thing.
Yeah. And
of course, at the same time, I'm dealing with somebody else's budget, somebody else's deadline. So the fear part is if I don't come through on this, I've got a lot of answers to answer to.
It's a lot of
those are the kind of things that are scary. But at the same time, those are the things that I do because that's what this job's about. That's what it's all about, right?
That is, but I love it. And there are so many parallels here that we can learn from. When we go for those goals that are so ridiculous and outlandish, and how on earth are we going to? But going into it with the mindset of, let me try and fail my way to success. Yeah. Let me try and just push through all the obstacles and keep going. There's nothing but wins in it. If not for the result, then at least for your own personal growth.
Right.
And that is, I think, the main reason for setting goals in the first place is for you to draw something out of yourself that you didn't even know was there.
Yes, absolutely.
You become a different person in the process. Yeah. And the byproduct becomes a finished prop or
it was a great team building exercise as well, which was not by design, but just
it's a byproduct.
Exactly, a byproduct of the whole process. Wow. But yeah, that's exactly it. So
that's great.
Sand was the same way, just to be clear. I'd never worked with sand before, and I thought this would be a brilliant idea.
Now, when Tim talks about sand, he refers to the time illusion that we performed at Bob Proctor's seminar.
I thought sand would be brilliant. It's a big, giant egg timer with the sand flowing through. It's a beautiful visual. There's something beautiful about the sand flowing and all that stuff. I thought this would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, sand is really tricky.
Until the cleanup.
So I learned a lot about sand.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was the same kind of thing. That was exactly it. As we got through that, it was the sand makes everything, gets into everything.
Sure.
Makes everything so much harder to do.
Yeah.
And it just, I think the complication level there with sand that none of us could see going into it.
No. And without revealing too much, the effect messed, like we failed many times.
Yeah.
But one time it got stuck because one grain of sand was in the wrong spot. And I can't believe that happened. But I actually celebrated the moment. I went, thank God it happened now.
It's like we
now
were talking about. It's amazing how those
Yeah.
the tiniest thing can have the biggest effect, right?
Yeah.
That's yeah.
But instead of getting hung up in it, you could celebrate the moment. So,
Yes.
thank goodness it happened. Now I learned from it. We
Now you
created
know what to
something
do.
different. But
Yep.
20 minutes before we stood on stage, there was still something going on with it. But that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
So if you had to mention your favorite illusion, Tim, that you've ever built, which one would that be?
So I don't have a single favorite.
Okay.
And I've done a lot of things that I'm very proud of. I've been involved in a lot of things that I'm very, very proud of. And I think that probably it's impossible for me to single out one because I get very excited about the one I'm doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as it's done, I'm on to the next one, right? And I always used to sort of tell people, they'd say, well, magicians love their props, right?
Oh, really?
Yes, in case you didn't know.
I'm not
Yes.
like that. I don't have illusion
They
items, Tim.
love their props, right? So as a magician, getting a prop is a lovely moment. They love getting them.
It is.
So, but for me, what it was that I enjoy the process of making it. Once it's made, I'm no longer as excited by it anymore. Not that I dislike it, but I'm just ready for the next thing. So the favorite, I think, would be, my favorite is always doing something that I didn't think I could do. And so I could probably list 20, 30 things that I've done where I would say that one was amazing, this one was great, this one was great, because it was not just making another thing, it was doing something that when I set out, I didn't think I could achieve it.
Absolutely.
So,
it was the personal growth in it.
absolutely. And I know that's not really a tangible answer. I mean, but there's things.
It's a great answer.
But it would apply to everything. From like time is a good example. We talk about failing a lot doing time for you.
Yeah.
I did a thing for a guy in South Korea with a train that flew. It was a 26-foot long train. It flew. So just the concept of that is mind blowing.
So how would you think if somebody came to you and said, "Hey, could you help me make how long was it?
26-foot long.
26-foot long train
Yeah.
fly." I mean, that idea for the average individual, there's no such thing as average, but for the average thinking mind, that idea would be so out there, they would almost think you'd be mental.
Yeah, and
I mean, and the magician's workshop is much like that. I mean, you would think it would be completely nuts when you look from the outside in.
Oh, absolutely. And when that job came up, that was one of those projects where I said, not sure how we're going to do this, so yes, let's let's do it, and that 30 days later, that one was a challenge because it was a 30-day project.
Wow.
So from the day that they said go, 30 days later in our workshop, there was a 26-foot long train flying and spinning around in the air and all this stuff. And it was absolutely crazy to pull that off in that amount of time.
Talking about impossible. So when you sit right now and you think New Year's is around the corner, I really would love to go for this quantum leap, but just know whatever follows but is the circumstance you're caught up in.
Right?
Because with the right willpower, the right way of using your reasoning factor, keep looking at the opportunities in the failures. There really isn't any failure. There's only a learning lesson. We only become failures in the moment we stop trying.
Yeah. So there's the favorite. Different things like that. Anything that's so ridiculous that you just go for it and do it, that's exactly it.
Love it. Tim, I want to thank you.
You're welcome. Thank
Really
you.
appreciate
Good to
you.
see you as always.
Thank you. I want you to subscribe to our channel, like this video below, and share it with friends and family members or associates that you believe could benefit from all this great information as well. And we're looking forward to seeing you in another episode of Insights to Impossible. Thank you very much.